Have you ever felt like a ghost, lost and left behind? This feeling often arises when someone decides to distance themselves from you, making you wonder if you are the reason for that distance. Perhaps in those moments, you create hundreds of reasons in your mind and even convince yourself that you are the problem. But take a deep breath and stay calm. Sometimes that silence contains a profound message. Distance is not a sign of an ending, but rather an opportunity for you to reflect on yourself. In today's video, I will share with you how to face situations when someone keeps their distance from valuable lessons. Don't miss the final part, as it will offer a new perspective on silence. A simple reason from Stoic philosophy is that you cannot control how others act, but you can completely control how you respond. So why not take this time as an opportunity to return to the values that truly matter? Use the moments of silence to reconnect with yourself, instead of seeking explanations from others. When you stop seeking approval or justification from the outside, you will discover your true worth. Remember, your value does not depend on the attention or acceptance of others. Don't let bitterness consume you, as it will only make you more tired. Let absence be a new step forward, and embrace the new things coming your way. In an ancient village, surrounded by majestic mountains and picturesque rivers, there was a woman named Mariella, who lived in painful silence. Her heart was broken because a close one had begun to distance themselves and ignore her without any clear reason. Mariella felt confused, restless, and with each passing day, she sank deeper into sadness and loneliness. She tried to understand why this person was treating her this way, but she couldn't find a satisfactory answer. The feeling of being abandoned made her feel lost and isolated, as if no one understood her. One day, Mariella decided to take a walk through the forest near the village to find some peace in her soul. She hoped to find answers to the questions in her heart. She walked along the trail without a specific destination. Suddenly, she encountered a wise old man living in a simple hut by the river. The old man saw the sorrow in her eyes and kindly asked, "My daughter, what burden does your heart carry?" Mariella could no longer hold back her emotions. She sat down beside him and shared her pain. She spoke about being ignored and feeling abandoned without understanding why. She was confused and didn't know what she had done wrong, and it felt like everything she tried was in vain. The old man listened patiently, saying nothing, just nodding in sympathy. After she finished, the old man gently began to share a story. Long ago, in this very forest, there was a special ancient tree. This tree had lush and strong branches that always shone in the sunlight. Everyone loved this tree. Birds came here to build nests, find shelter, and seek safety. But over time, some birds began to fly away and no longer perched on its branches. The tree saw the empty branches and felt sad, wondering what it had done wrong to cause the birds to leave. Mariella listened attentively, and the old man continued. One day, a wise wind blew through and whispered to the branches. The wind said, "Don't be sad when the birds fly away. They find their own path, and you cannot keep them forever. You are like a tree. Keep reaching out your branches, expanding your limbs towards the sky, and strengthening your roots deep in the ground. Those who truly need your shade and shelter will always find their way back." The tree understood that its value did not depend on whether the birds came to visit or not. Its true value lay in its ability to become sturdier, stronger every day, regardless of who came or went. It did not need the birds' recognition to define its worth. When the birds flew away, the tree stood firm, grew, and continued to thrive. Mariella felt the old man's words as a healing balm for her wounded heart. She realized that she couldn't control the actions or decisions of others, just as the tree couldn't control the coming and going of the birds. However, she could choose how to face this situation, grow, and become stronger. She understood that she was not the only one facing rejection, nor the only one feeling abandoned. But just like the tree in the forest, she could choose to keep growing, strengthening herself, and not let the absence of others diminish her value. Mariella thanked the old man for his wise words, and with a sense of relief in her heart, she began to walk back home. She no longer felt the need to hold on to others or wonder why they left. She realized that her mission was not to try to hold on to those who didn't want to stay, but to continue to grow, just like the ancient tree, strong and resilient despite all changes. Those who truly valued her essence would always find their way back. The lesson she took from this story was, when someone leaves or ignores us, our task is not to cling to them or wonder why, but to continue to grow, rise, and strengthen ourselves. Believe that those who truly appreciate us will always find a way to return when they recognize our value. And in life, when we persevere and develop ourselves, those who truly need us will always remain by our side, just like the birds returning to the ancient tree. Have you ever felt abandoned, distant, or without any clear explanation? The feeling of being ignored, left alone in a quiet space without understanding the real reason behind it, can truly leave you confused and even hurt. When someone stops communicating or keeps their distance, it's easy to wonder what you did wrong or create hypotheses in your mind about the cause. You might think you did something that made the other person no longer want to reach out, to the point where you imagine a tragic scenario, like a Hollywood movie with complicated plot twists. But before you rush to think that the worst has happened, have you ever tried to look at it from a different perspective? Silence doesn't always carry a negative meaning, and sometimes it's not a sign that the other person doesn't want to meet you anymore. In fact, it could be a necessary pause for both parties, an opportunity for both of you to find balance and refresh your minds. People who follow Stoic philosophy often believe that silence holds profound value and can go far beyond the mere absence of words. Silence can be a test to measure your patience and endurance, as well as a way to reflect on yourself without being influenced by the noise of the outside world. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that when someone starts distancing themselves from you, it certainly means there's a problem in the relationship, as if life and relationships are simple math formulas. They ignored me, so something must be wrong. The human mind has the ability to create stories, and sometimes these stories are just distorted reflections of our own insecurities. In reality, silence can have many reasons. Maybe the other person is facing a personal crisis that you're unaware of, struggling with their own issues, or maybe they simply need some time to think and refresh themselves. And if you try to view it from this angle, have you ever experienced moments when all you needed was a pause, a space to disconnect freely, not having to answer anyone, not reacting to any expectations from others, or even to the thoughts in your own mind? The need for personal space isn't something strange. It's a natural part of being human, an essential part that helps us recharge and keep our minds sharp. True, sometimes distancing might come from reasons that are unkind or unjust. But before you rush to conclude that you've been rejected, can you try a healthier approach? This is where Stoic philosophy can help you. It invites us to create distance not only from others but also from our own emotions. In fact, the key lies in how we react to silence. If you always assume that the worst will happen every time someone pulls away, then these assumptions will become true in your mind. However, instead of immersing yourself in a storm of negative thoughts, why not see silence as an opportunity to reflect on yourself? Instead of thinking that they ignore you because you're not good enough, think that maybe the other person simply needs time to deal with their own problems, just as you may have needed a pause at some point in your life. Accepting that we cannot control the actions of others is truly liberating. Instead of seeking explanations that may only increase your anxiety and insecurity, why not ask yourself what you can learn from this situation? Silence can reflect your expectations of others and of yourself. This is a simple yet very effective strategy to create space for your mind so that it's not overwhelmed by unnecessary guesses and worries. Don't rush to fill that gap with hypotheses that make silence louder. Remember that sometimes the wisest thing is to listen to the unspoken so that the silence can unleash its healing power. If someone walks away, respect their decision. You may also need a break at some point in life, and that doesn't mean the relationship is completely broken. When you view silence from the right perspective, it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It might just be time for reflection, to create space for the feelings and needs of all involved. So when you feel ignored or distant, instead of rushing to assume the worst has happened, stop, breathe, and understand that silence might be the only way to find peace in your soul. Ultimately, silence, just like when you want it when everything becomes too noisy, is an art. The art of understanding and accepting silence is a lesson in patience with others and with yourself. As Epictetus said, silence is not always empty. Sometimes it is the space where the soul finds itself. Have you ever felt frustrated, overlooked, as if you simply don't exist in someone's eyes? This feeling is truly uncomfortable, isn't it? Especially when you find yourself wondering, what did I do wrong? However, what if I told you that the key to overcoming the feeling of being ignored isn't to change the behavior of others, but to strengthen your own self-esteem so that their indifference doesn't become a blow to your ego? It sounds simple, but in reality, it can be difficult to stay calm when you feel excluded, or as though you're not seen at all. When you're ignored, our minds tend to start working in negative directions. You'll create stories about what you did or didn't do, about mistakes that may have caused the other person to distance themselves from you. You might tell yourself, maybe I'm no longer interesting, or maybe I made some mistake that I don't want to admit. But in truth, these thoughts don't take you anywhere good. People are not perfect beings, and our relationships are complex. We don't always meet each other's expectations. Sometimes people simply distance themselves for personal reasons that have nothing to do with you, like a bad day, a personal issue, or simply because you're not fitting into their life at that moment. So how can you stay strong when it feels like the world around you is ignoring you? That's when your self-esteem needs to come into play. Self-esteem is the ability to respect and value yourself, even when no one else is doing so in that moment. For example, the Stoic philosophers taught that the only real source of power we have is ourselves. We can't control the actions of others, but we can fully control how we respond to those actions. Imagine that your confidence is a small boat in the vast ocean. The waves, the criticism, the indifference, and misunderstandings may shake the boat, but if the boat is built strongly, it won't capsize. This doesn't mean you won't feel heartbroken, but at least you will learn how not to let yourself sink with the waves. Strong self-esteem is the foundation that helps you maintain emotional distance when things get complicated. This doesn't mean you don't care about what others think of you, but that you don't let their thoughts define your worth. When someone ignores you, that doesn't diminish your value as a person. And if someone has pushed you away without explanation, maybe it's time to let the wind carry them away, to let them find their own path without letting that affect your own. We need to learn how to separate our personal feelings from the actions of others, because their indifference has nothing to do with our true value. Self-criticism is one of the easiest ways to destroy our self-esteem. If you find yourself thinking that you're not worthy, remember that these thoughts are just thoughts, not facts. An effective strategy to overcome this is to stop and question those thoughts. You can ask yourself if these thoughts are truly true. At first, this might be a challenge, but with practice, you'll realize that many times your negative thoughts have no real basis. Sometimes we're just expressing our own insecurity without any real reason to do so. Instead of telling yourself, "They ignore me because I'm not important," try changing your thought and tell yourself, "Maybe they're going through something and it has nothing to do with my value." This shift in perspective can make a big difference in how you feel about yourself. This is inevitable. Our relationships will certainly affect our self-esteem. If you're surrounded by people who don't value you or make you feel invisible, it's time to change how you view them. This doesn't mean you need to cut off all relationships immediately, but you should recognize that there are people who are good for you, and there are others who drain you emotionally. It's time to identify which relationships truly give you positive energy and which ones just leave you feeling exhausted. When you understand that someone else's indifference is not a criticism of you, but a part of their own journey, you will feel much lighter. Learn to look at things from a different angle, so you don't get caught up in baseless negative thoughts. Life and relationships will sometimes be difficult, but if you can maintain your self-esteem and understand that your value doesn't depend on others, you will always stand firm no matter what challenges you face. Always surround yourself with people who truly appreciate you, those who don't need you to prove your worth because they have already seen your importance. Your self-esteem can be affected by the relationships around you. So if someone makes you feel small or continuously ignores you, it might be time to reconsider their role in your life. Sometimes you need to stand up and protect yourself from people who don't respect you enough. One important concept when it comes to self-esteem is self-compassion. No one is perfect, and we all have bad moments, times when we make mistakes or fall short of what we hoped for. The key here is to treat yourself kindly during those times. Instead of blaming yourself or feeling guilty for things you cannot control, learn to accept yourself as you are, with both your virtues and flaws. If you allow yourself to be human with all your perfection and imperfection, your self-esteem will become much stronger. This will help you face life's difficulties more firmly. We all have bad days or moments when the feeling of not being good enough arises, but that feeling is not what defines who you are. Practice self-compassion, and instead of blaming yourself, think about what you need to do to feel better and keep moving forward. Your self-esteem is not something you should rely on others to determine. When you feel abandoned or ignored, instead of looking at yourself and thinking that you're not valuable, look back at what you have achieved. Take some time to reflect on your successes, big or small. It could be a project you completed despite difficulties, or personal achievements you overcame, even in the toughest circumstances. When you feel abandoned, the best thing you can do is reconnect with your own accomplishments and remind yourself of what has helped you get to where you are today. This will help you realize that you don't need external validation to know your worth. True self-esteem comes from recognizing your own strengths and abilities. If I've learned one thing in life, it's that the key to not breaking down when you feel abandoned is your ability to maintain your own stance. Self-esteem is not just an abstract concept, but a real tool that helps you navigate life, even when everything around you is becoming chaotic. So, the next time someone ignores you, remember to take a deep breath, brush yourself off, and keep moving forward. Ultimately, you are the only one who needs to believe in your own value. Remember that your worth doesn't come from the approval of others, but from the inner certainty that you deserve the best in life. Sometimes we have a hard time recognizing our true value, and it becomes even more difficult when we feel we need others' confirmation. But when you feel ignored or distant, the lack of external attention can make you think your value has diminished. If you feel that way, take time to ask yourself, is external validation really the only measure of my worth? Society has taught us in countless ways that validation from others is the best way to measure our worth. But what if all of that is a fallacy? Like the Stoics, perhaps we need to start questioning what we tell ourselves about our importance. When someone distances themselves from you, the first thing that often pops into your mind is insecurity, thinking, maybe I'm not good enough. The feeling of not being good enough always arises when things don't go as expected. But let me tell you something important. The idea of not being good enough will dissipate when you understand that your value doesn't depend on the presence or absence of others. Imagine you have to rely on others to know if you are worthy. Like checking a thermometer to see if the temperature reaches the level you desire, without realizing that you are the one who can control that temperature. The Stoics, who seem to have understood everything in life, taught us an important lesson. External validation is unnecessary. They believe that everything happening outside of us is just a distraction, and the only thing we can truly control is how we react to those situations. So instead of letting yourself get caught up in worry and doubt when someone walks away, ask yourself, how will I respond to this? Will you drown in disappointment and self-blame? Or, like the Stoics, will you decide to remain calm and realize that what's happening outside has nothing to do with your true value? Try to imagine a real situation. You're at a party, and suddenly, the person who always paid attention to you starts paying attention to everyone else, no longer noticing you. You feel hurt, disappointed, maybe even angry. But you can also look at the situation from another angle. Does it really matter if that person ignores you? If they ignore you, it's not your problem. Being ignored doesn't mean you lack value. It could simply be that the other person is busy with their own things or has personal issues to resolve. The key here is how you interpret the situation. You can't control the actions of others, but you can control how you react to those actions. If you choose to treat it as a personal issue and let it hurt you, you're giving the other person the power to define your value. But if you decide that their behavior doesn't affect how you view yourself, that is true power. How do you change this mindset? First, you need to practice self-compassion. It's a simple but incredibly powerful exercise. Whenever you feel insecure, take a deep breath and remember that your value doesn't depend on whether someone sees you or talks to you. Practice feeling comfortable with yourself, even when others aren't constantly validating you. You don't always have to appear strong. Sometimes accepting yourself and your vulnerability is the bravest thing you can do. Finally, remember that your value isn't in the hands of others. If they ignore you or distance themselves from you, don't forget that your value doesn't change. What truly matters is how you view yourself and your ability to create inner certainty, no matter how the outside world changes. Have you ever realized that, as Stoic philosophers have taught, what lies beyond our control truly doesn't matter? To live in peace and harmony, you need to understand that your self-worth does not depend on others' approval, but rather on how you choose to think about yourself. As Seneca once told his disciples, your value is not determined by what others think of you, but by what you choose to think of yourself. One important lesson we can learn from Stoics is the art of creating space, both for ourselves and for those around us. Have you noticed this? The more you try to get close to someone, the more it seems like they grow distant, as if your need to be near others constantly makes things tense and uncomfortable. And in reality, it's not that they've forgotten you or found someone more interesting. Sure, there may be some element of that, but what's more important is that you need to understand that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is freedom and space. A healthy relationship is not always bound together so tightly that it becomes inseparable. Attachment can become suffocating if you don't allow the other person's space to breathe and grow. A simple example is a tree that keeps growing without space. It will get entangled in everything around it and eventually harm itself. People are the same. When we start paying too much attention or get too attached to a relationship, we may unintentionally create pressure and make the other person feel trapped. At first, the desire to be close, cared for, and share may be a good thing, but when these feelings become a necessity, pressure begins to build. At that point, the other person will feel stuck in a relationship, unable to move, unable to breathe, and unable to think freely. This is when the relationship begins to have problems. You will notice that the other person is ignoring you, distancing themselves from you, but you don't know why. And you keep waiting, like a dog with its ball, hoping someone will call your name. But don't do that. No one is asking you to be a soulmate, always present and never letting go, even for a second. You don't need to be someone who is constantly present, always around, but ultimately becomes annoying. Like a microphone left on in a Zoom meeting when no one asked for it. The key here is serenity and understanding that what cannot be expressed in words can be conveyed through distance and space. The best relationships are those with enough space so that each person can live and grow comfortably without being surveilled or having every action tracked. This doesn't mean ignoring or disconnecting, but giving each other space to breathe, so each person can develop and do what they want. If someone moves a little farther away, it doesn't mean it's over, and it's not a sign of abandonment. They may just be seeking a little quiet to deal with their own personal issues. It's not that they're running away, but that they need distance to recover and regain balance. Next time, if someone distances themselves from you, don't worry or despair. Let things unfold naturally. Don't try to pull them back closer. One of the simplest yet most powerful strategies is learning to let go, giving some space without feeling like you're giving up on them or your relationship. In fact, it's a liberation for both sides. As great thinkers, especially the Stoics, have pointed out, respecting others' boundaries and controlling your emotions are essential elements for true happiness. So instead of trying to hold on to a relationship or chase after someone's attention, start practicing self-control and compassion for yourself. You don't always have to be strong, and sometimes true courage is accepting yourself in your weakness and imperfection. Remember, in a relationship, giving space doesn't mean giving up. It means you understand that relationships need ups and downs, just like the tides of the ocean. There must be quiet moments and times when the winds blow strongly. You don't have to be there, always reaching out like a wave in comfort. Instead, enjoy your own space. Feel the freedom of not always waiting for others to confirm you. Once you learn to stand firm and breathe freely, you will experience a peace you've never had before. That's true liberation. And you'll notice that when you give a little space, you will receive more than you expect. Next time you feel distant or ignored, remember that this is not the end. It's an opportunity to practice letting go and learning to give space. Don't worry about someone pulling away from you. Learn to respect their boundaries and accept that relationships don't always have to be tightly bound. In fact, one of the best ways to become closer to someone is to learn to give them space. As Marcus Aurelius said, sometimes letting go is the wisest way to get closer. So, instead of feeling despair when someone ignores you, practice self-compassion and let things unfold naturally. When you give a little space, you will gain peace of mind, and your relationship will become stronger when both of you can breathe and grow together. If you've realized that the current distance is not a mistake or a coincidence, don't panic. Remember that the worst thing you can do is rush to seek answers. Try to force a conversation or beg for someone's attention. These actions only increase the distance between you and the other person, and that's not the best approach. Imagine you're facing a fire. Instead of extinguishing the flames with water, you keep throwing more wood onto the fire. Your insecurity and your intense need for attention are the wood, fueling a fire that cannot be put out, making everything worse. So what can you do when facing this situation? The answer is not a magical formula, but there is a simple solution you can apply. Create space. I understand that this may sound contradictory, but Stoic philosophy teaches us that what is beyond our control is not worth worrying about. If someone is deliberately distancing themselves from you, the only thing you can control is how you respond to the situation. And sometimes, the best response is to create space, allowing things to unfold naturally. Creating space doesn't mean disappearing completely or ignoring the situation. Instead, it means taking time to reflect on the situation and giving the other person time to think about the relationship between the two of you. During this process, it's important to preserve your mental health and self-esteem. Don't fall into the trap of seeking validation from others. Remember that your worth is not determined by others. Use this time to focus on yourself, do the things you love, and strengthen your own passions. If necessary, you can also reassess the relationship and what you truly expect from it. Everything in life changes, people change, and circumstances change. Don't obsess over what you can't control, because desperation only makes things more complicated. And you don't need to be the fuel to feed that fire. If you feel ignored or distant, don't let worry take over. The right solution is to take a step back, create space, and let things unfold naturally. Patience and calm are the best companions in this situation. Over time, you will notice that things will become clearer, and you will have the insight to make better decisions for yourself. As a wise Stoic proverb says, silence is not always forgetfulness. Sometimes it is the answer you need. When you feel abandoned or ignored, you will face awkward moments when you don't know whether to speak or stay silent. During such times, you may wonder whether you should speak up to resolve the situation or remain silent, keeping calm. As Stoics have taught, the best approach is to remain calm and not let emotions control your actions. However, sometimes silence is not the only choice. We've all been in such awkward situations where feeling abandoned or being treated coldly makes us feel invisible. At that moment, part of you may want to express all your frustration, wanting to vent with questions like, "Why are you ignoring me? What did I do wrong?" Or "Why are you turning your back on me without explaining?" But this is an impulsive reaction, and we all recognize that it only adds to the tension and noise without providing a real resolution. The solution, as Stoics have advised, is not to let your emotions be swept away by the changing winds. What's important is not reacting hastily, but reflecting before you act. This means asking yourself whether you want the situation to turn into a tense confrontation, or if you will be the wise one who steps back to find a way to handle the situation without making things worse. So, how can you cope with the feeling of being ignored without causing unnecessary confrontation? At this point, the key is assertive communication. Assertive communication is not complete silence, nor is it an emotional outburst like a pressure cooker. It's about finding balance so you can express your feelings clearly without hurting the other person. For example, if someone is ignoring you, instead of diving into a direct confrontation, you could try saying something gentle like, "Lately, I've noticed we seem to be a bit more distant. Is there something bothering you?" This opens the space for a conversation without making the other person feel attacked or putting them on the defensive. Another option is to take the initiative to reconnect with the person. Sometimes, the best way to reduce the distance between two people is to move forward, show vulnerability, and be willing to communicate. What's important is making it clear that even though the other person may seem indifferent, you are still ready to talk and resolve any issues. Don't take being ignored as a personal attack. Maybe that person is just dealing with their own problems and doesn't realize the hurt their actions are causing you. Remember, not everything revolves around you, and sometimes what others do doesn't directly relate to you. The important thing is to know how to handle your own emotions without falling into unnecessary confrontations that will only make you more exhausted. Effective communication is built on mutual respect and self-awareness, not a battle of words to win. Stoic philosophy invites us to live with serenity and wisdom, teaching us that our greatest strength is our ability to control our reactions. Therefore, the next time you feel abandoned or distant, take a deep breath, reflect, and choose to respond wisely. Inner peace doesn't come from trying to change others, but from sincere and wise communication, knowing when and how to express your feelings without harming yourself or others. If you cannot change the attitude of others, change how you respond. As Stoics have said, the only thing you can control is your reaction. The rest is beyond your control. Inner peace starts with you, with your ability to stand firm and decide how to respond in difficult situations. Great thinkers, such as the Stoics, teach us that true inner peace comes from what we can control within ourselves, not from what others think or do. If you are constantly seeking validation from others, from their gaze or compliments, you will eventually lose your true essence. You will feel as though you are just a reflection, an illusion that exists only when perceived by others. When someone ignores you, the temptation to regain their attention is strong. Even though the reason for their distance may be a misunderstanding or simply because they don't want to share space with you at that moment. Our common reaction is to try to do something to get their attention back. However, did you know that this action can actually make things worse? The more you persist, the more desperate you become. And worst of all, you lose the chance to show them that you can remain calm despite their indifference. So, how can you change this situation? Instead of holding on tightly, why not try the art of letting go? The first step is to accept an obvious truth. We cannot control the thoughts or emotions of others. Accepting this not only frees you, but also gives you the power to act freely without being dependent on others. Respect for yourself and that elusive value does not come from chasing or begging for attention from anyone. It comes when you can maintain balance without relying on the emotions of others. Imagine that instead of chasing after the attention of the person who is gradually distancing themselves, you choose to be like a river flowing naturally, flexible, but not losing your essence. When you let go, you become much more attractive because you become someone with your own life, no longer needing the attention of others to exist. This attitude not only brings you inner peace, but can also attract respect and admiration from others, more than anything you could achieve by seeking validation. Stoic philosophy is particularly fitting in today's rapidly changing world, teaching us that life is short, and the only thing we can truly control is our reaction to the events around us. When you free yourself from the need to constantly seek acceptance from others and learn to enjoy your own time, you will not only achieve inner peace but also create respect from others. When you show your calmness and authenticity, the indifference of others will no longer affect you. And truly, that's what creates real respect. Stop chasing after what you can't achieve, and stop running after attention that doesn't belong to you. Learn to let go, and you will see everything start to flow much more easily. Respect and admiration are not earned through persistence or force, but come from the ability to live in harmony with yourself without needing validation from others. As Murphy's saying goes, the one who forgets to chase is the one most likely to be chased. Instead of trying to please others, focus on your own growth. Have you ever felt ignored or distant from someone? When that happens, you may feel as though the whole world is collapsing and you are the main character in a tragedy. However, instead of wallowing in the feeling of abandonment, look beyond and start focusing on what really matters, your personal growth. Sometimes, we easily fall into the trap of obsessing over the reactions of others. If someone ignores you or distances themselves from you, you might wonder if you did something wrong, if you're not good enough. But what if all of this is just a temporary distraction? What if, instead of spending your energy on what others are doing or not doing, you focus it on yourself, on your progress and personal development? It may sound simple, but this is the path that, although hard to accept, brings true peace. Stoic philosophy invites us to focus on what we can control, which is our thoughts, actions, and reactions. If someone decides to distance themselves from you, that is beyond your control, and you cannot force them to come back. However, the only thing you can do is choose how to respond to that situation. You can regret it, blame yourself, or circle around with questions like, why am I being ignored? But you can also choose to grow, to learn how to separate yourself from the worry. Of course, this is not easy. It's like they're asking you to stop breathing, but they don't tell you that when you let go, the air will come and revive you. When you free yourself from the constant need to seek acceptance from others, you will find something far more valuable, your own authenticity. You stop reflecting the expectations of others and begin to create your own life. Imagine, instead of continuing to wait for others to validate you, you look in the mirror and say to yourself, I am fine as I am. It may sound like a self-help mantra, but if you truly reach this point, the feeling of rejection will no longer affect you. You will realize that the only thing that really matters is what you think and do. So, instead of waiting for others' acceptance, learn to find satisfaction from within yourself. When you can do that, you will become stronger and more confident, and realize that rejection or being ignored by others cannot define you. You are the only one who has the right to define your own worth, and that is the greatest power you can have. The power of discipline is the most important factor in personal growth. Devoting time to personal development doesn't necessarily mean complex actions like reading dozens of books or pursuing a master's degree in self-development. In reality, positive changes stem from small and simple daily habits, actions that help you feel good about yourself. It could be reading a chapter of a book every day, journaling your thoughts, or simply walking alone to disconnect from everything and everyone at the end of the day. As you engage in these habits, you'll begin to change the way you see yourself. You will no longer be someone who needs to be validated by others to feel worthy. Instead, you'll become someone who understands their own value, someone who knows that even though others may distance themselves, it has no effect on your happiness. When someone ignores you or doesn't want to be close to you, instead of feeling disappointed, why not turn it into an opportunity for growth? Life is not a race to gain the attention of others. True victory is achieving balance and personal development, and eventually others will realize that the best way to achieve your goals is by succeeding as your best version. You will no longer rely on the opinions of others about you. As my father always used to say, may he rest in peace. A person who focuses on themselves won't have time to regret others. An important part of this process is learning to seize the opportunity to rediscover yourself. When you realize that when others ignore you or distance themselves, the world is not ending, you'll see that you can master your emotions. Of course, this is not always easy to accept, but it is one of the lessons life brings us in its own way. Instead of panicking or creating drama, you can seize the opportunity to look in the mirror, not to fix yourself, but to reflect on your soul and ask yourself what is really happening with you. Stoic philosophy emphasizes that we need to accept what we cannot control and focus on what we can. If someone decides to leave, that is beyond your control. You cannot force anyone to stay with you. However, you can choose how you respond to it. You can regret, blame yourself, or circle around asking why you're being ignored. But you can also choose to grow, learn to detach yourself from anxiety. Of course, this is not easy. It's like asking you to stop breathing. But what they don't tell you is that when you stop worrying, air will come and revive you. When you free yourself from the need to constantly be accepted by others, you will discover something far more valuable: your own authenticity. Sometimes we spend too much time and energy reflecting on other people's expectations, to the point that we lose ourselves. When someone distances themselves from you, it's an opportunity for you to stop and reflect on what you truly need and want in life. One of the key elements in this process is self-questioning. Instead of spending too much time thinking about what others expect from you, ask yourself what you truly want. This will help you begin to discover your true desires, things beyond societal pressure and others' expectations. When you give yourself the space to explore your own desires, you'll begin to understand that relationships should not be a burden, but a place to grow together. Self-awareness will help you set boundaries. There are people, perhaps you didn't realize, who have crossed your boundaries over and over again. The disconnection in such cases serves as a wake-up call for you to rediscover your true self and what you need to become better. However, simply saying, "I will rediscover myself," is not enough. This process requires commitment, effort, and honesty with yourself. The best way to start is to take a few minutes to deeply reflect on yourself. A good starting point could be journaling, where you express yourself freely without fear or judgment. This exercise will help you better understand your true desires, desires that go beyond pressure and others' expectations. Another helpful method is to practice boundary meditation. You can imagine closing your eyes and visualizing an invisible boundary protecting who you are. This will not only give you a sense of control, but also reinforce the idea that your health and peace of mind must always come first. When people cross your boundaries, you will respond from a firm and steady position, rather than feeling desperate. Ultimately, gratitude will become a wonderful companion when we face chaos in relationships and external influences. When we feel stuck, we often forget the small things that truly connect us to ourselves. Practicing gratitude for quiet moments, such as reading a book or simply walking alone, can help you rediscover what truly matters in life. And when the indifferent wind blows towards you, instead of hiding in action, view this separation as a gift. Stoic philosophy teaches us that we cannot control the actions of others, but we can control our reactions to them. If someone leaves or ignores you, it's not the end. In fact, it's a perfect opportunity to reconnect with yourself and make the necessary adjustments. Don't get lost in the noise of others, or waste time trying to understand people who don't care enough about you. Ultimately, the only relationship you need to nurture first is the relationship with yourself. When you understand what you truly want and what you are willing to endure, you will realize that life will become simpler, more authentic, and entirely your own. Finally, I want to share something with you, that although it may be painful, the truth is, the person who doesn't know how to be alone will never understand how to be alone. If you have come this far, share your experiences in the comments. Those who have left you, let them go, because sometimes it's just a part of the journey, and they're not worth you going back for. I really hope you'll hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment so that YouTube recognizes these videos as valuable to people like you. This not only helps us continue creating and developing similar content in the future, but also encourages us to work harder to bring useful videos. I also want to suggest that you go back and check out the last 2 videos we shared, and I hope you'll find valuable information in them. I sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch and support our channel. Your support truly means a lot and motivates us to keep going. We really hope to see you again on our next adventures, where we will continue to bring you interesting and helpful content. Thank you so much, and see you in the next videos.